Connie was driving home. It was almost noon on Saturday. She knew very well that Martin would be waiting for her. This was exactly what she wanted. She took a deep breath. In a sense, it was all over, but there was still one small part that needed to be played. She smiled, imagining what it would be like. Yes, she had gotten her pound of flesh and was going to show it off like a trophy. In the bag next to her was the green dress she had worn the night before. In fact, her entire outfit was there, as well as her work clothes from Friday. The evidence was there and left no doubt about what had happened. She smiled. Oh, how good she felt. Her phone rang. It was Ann Barton. "Hey, how was your night, Ann?" "So-so. He turned out to be boring. How was your date? Finished?" "Yes, and I'm on my way home now. I'm sure Martin will be there." "Connie, he will be very angry," Ann remarked. "Oh, I know he'll be angry, but that's why I did it. I want him to understand what it is." "You're playing with fire." "I can handle Martin. His conscience will torture him." "I don't know. He might be too angry to think about anything else," Ann warned. "Yeah, but if I know him, he'll finally confess when he sees how serious I am." "Be careful. He might get aggressive before he thinks." "Don't worry, Ann. I know Martin. We have been married for over 8 years." "But what you did." "Yes, I know, but I know what buttons to push. All men are the same, and we women have to stick together," Connie said with an insincere laugh. "Be careful. This could get serious. Are you sure you don't want to give it time to cool down?" "I'm sure, and besides, he deserves it for what he did to me and to you." Connie's anger began to boil. "Listen, I'm sorry this happened, and I wish I hadn't told you. I never imagined this would happen, and it's not my fault." Ann felt a little guilty. "Yes, I know, it's not your fault." "I can flirt, but I didn't think it would go this far," Ann said in her defense. "Okay, but he had to stop. Some men think in the wrong place. Sometimes I also don't think, well, about what could happen. But you're not mad at me." "No, I'm not mad at you. He was the one who should have stopped," Connie stated, her anger growing as she remembered her husband's actions. "But we both drank. I'm much bigger than him," Ann admitted. "I know you can flirt, and you both drank, but that didn't give him the right. Call me if there are serious problems. If you need a place to stay while it cools off. I can handle it. I can control my husband. I have to run. I'm almost home." Connie confidently turned into the entrance. She was more than ready to make her statement. She drove into the garage and parked. His truck was there. She knew he would. Walking into the kitchen, she didn't find him there, but he was somewhere in the house. Heading towards the master bedroom, she dropped her bag on the bed along the way. As soon as she entered the bathroom, he appeared. "Where have you been?" he asked sharply. She smiled. "I had things to do. Now I need to take a shower. See you in a little while." She closed and locked the door. She did it out of spite. Martin could have opened the lock, since it was only intended for privacy and had no real key. But as she expected, he did not do this. He let her be alone, and if she knew him, then at that moment he was searching her bag. She smiled, imagining his reaction to the contents. After the shower, she applied her makeup. She wanted to look her best. Then it was time to get dressed. She chose a push-up bra and French panties. On top, she put on shorts and a light blouse. She wore platform sandals on her feet. Now it's time to complete the final stage of her plan. Connie came out of the bathroom and saw the contents of her bag laid out on the bed, just as she had imagined. This inspired confidence that the rest would go according to plan. She walked into the kitchen. Martin was sitting at the table with a mug of coffee next to him. He looked tired and nervous. In fact, he was spinning the phone on the table as if it were a domino. Serves him right, she thought. With a mug of coffee in her hand, she turned to him. She was ready. "Where the hell have you been?" "Well, to be honest, I was on a date." She took a sip of her coffee and gave her statement time to settle. "A date? What do you mean by date?" he demanded. "I told you I was on a date. I went on a date with a man. I see you helped me unpack my bag. Thanks for this. Have you been on a date? He shouted. Yes, and I won't lie like you. I want to be open and honest. What's going on in your head? You just won't admit that. You, you, you slept with my best friend. You keep denying it. I didn't do it. I never touched Anne or any other woman. Oh, come on, I know what happened. You drove Anne home. You walked her to the door. Connie started to get angry and impatient. She didn't want this, but she couldn't help herself. You just broke in and wanted payment, as you said. You took what you wanted. I didn't do anything like that. Anne is a lying bitch. You can continue your story, but I know the truth, and I have taken revenge. He just stared at her in disbelief. Yes, I took revenge. I had a date, and he was a gentleman. He drove me for dinner, then for the dance. You haven't taken me dancing in years, and I want you to know that he is a much better dancer than you. Date? He repeated with anger. Yeah, and dancing isn't all he does better than you. He is a wonderful lover. He took me to his place. You should take lessons from him. Date, gentleman, sex? I don't want to hear it. Did you sleep with another man? Martin shouted, but there was pain in his voice. Yeah, so you see, I can do what you do, but I won't hide it or lie about it. Martin was angry and offended. He would never have imagined that his wife could be so cruel and heartless. She actually admitted to cheating, and she still had the idea that he slept with Anne. He was in shock. He took the phone and put it in his pocket before heading to the bedroom. He entered and saw a green dress on the bed. He shook his head and felt his eyes fill with tears. Connie did not follow him immediately, but entered the room as he began to remove his things. She was a little shocked. She thought that he would understand that he could not change her, that she would make him pay. But she was not ready for such a reaction. She followed him into the guest bedroom where he had been sleeping for the past few weeks. Slept there, yes, but his clothes were still in their room, and he was still using their shower. She hadn't invited him back to their bed, but she was ready for it now. This is what she thought would happen when she told Martin about the date. He will realize how close he was to losing her and will take her to bed. He will prove his love to her and promise never to cheat on her again. Seeing him remove his things from the bathroom, she considered it only a minor setback. She will let him cool down and come to his senses. Connie gave him space that afternoon. She called Anne to report the encounter and express her disappointment that he didn't confess. But she knew that he would confess and everything would be fine tomorrow. Anne listened and warned that this might not go according to plan. Why not? He cheated. I know you wouldn't lie about it. He may have convinced himself it was your fault so he wouldn't admit it. But he'll understand that I won't stand for it. But some men are stubborn. He may never admit it, said Anne, knowing it was all her lie. It doesn't matter. He'll get back to me by morning. I know we'll work it out tonight. Later that day, she went to look for her husband. He was sitting on the back porch with a beer. She poured herself a glass of wine and joined him. He was so immersed in his thoughts that he did not notice her or ignored her. Connie was silent for a while and then spoke. Isn't it a beautiful sunset? When she said this, he shuddered. Well, at least he didn't ignore me, she smiled. I think so. It's sad in a way, he said. Really, to me, sunset symbolizes the end of one day and the promise of a new day tomorrow. If you say so. Yes, it is, and this can be a new day for us. We can go to bed today, make new promises, and start our lives again tomorrow. He turned and looked at her. She didn't like the look in his eyes. You're crazy. Why make new promises if you haven't kept the old ones? Connie started to get angry. She hated being called a woman. How dare he? Listen to me, Martin Raymond Jameson. You can have sex with any woman you want, and then come back to me. Should I just greet you like nothing happened? But now that I have another lover, I am a bad woman, bad goods, right? No, I think the word will be woman of easy virtue. This shocked and angered her to the limit. What does that mean, you son of a bitch? He didn't say a word, just got up and left. He slept in the guest room, and was glad she didn't come to him that night. It wouldn't be pretty. On Sunday, they avoided each other. He is from pain and resentment. She is from anger and disappointment. Connie got up and went to work on Monday without saying a word to her husband. Along the way, she recalled the events that led up to the weekend. It's been a little over a month since she found out that her husband slept with her friend. She and Ann Barton had been best friends since elementary school. They've been through a lot together. The boys' discovery, their first heartbreaks, becoming women, and all the ups and downs of friendship. Connie had to leave town about 7 months ago for a few days. This was necessary to advance her career. She worked in marketing and every contact was valuable. It didn't hurt that she was very attractive. She smiled, remembering how she could manipulate men. Just a smile or a wink, and she got almost everything she wanted. She carefully looked after herself, played sports, and followed a diet. She was just over 5.5 feet tall and could wear heels without towering over the men in the office. She had jet black hair that was shiny and was her pride. She had dark eyes and a beautiful figure. Her breasts were always on display. Her breasts seemed even more tempting with her 25-inch waist and 35-inch hips. And she knew how to use all her strengths. True, she never cheated on her husband, but sometimes she hinted to men. She did it to close a deal or get her foot in the door. She knew it was probably more than Martin would approve of, but she never crosses the line into. Never crossed the line until I found out about his misdeed, Anne admitted. She told the story to her best advantage, but Martin still crossed the line. Anne needed a ride home and asked Martin. When Connie left town, he suggested they stop by for a drink. He said he didn't want to return to an empty house. Anne admitted she had more than one drink, but insisted it was all his initiative. Then, when they left and got to her apartment, he followed her. Under the influence of alcohol and everything else, he carried her into the bedroom. She knew it was wrong, but she didn't know what to do, she said. To avoid unnecessary shame, she gave in. What story did she tell? Connie knew her friend. She knew her habits. Anne was a flirt and loved to tease men. Anne had been like this ever since she was abandoned at the altar. This was also partly her fault. She lured the best man into bed on the eve of the wedding. She felt that this was her last chance as a free woman. When the groom was informed early in the morning, he came to the wedding. When asked if he wanted to take Anne as his wife, he said no. He didn't want to deal with a woman who slept with another man the night before her wedding. He took the rings off the pillow and left. Everyone was stunned, to say the least, especially both sides of the parents. This turned into quite a scene and could have been handled better differently. This left her completely humiliated. Since then, Anne seemed to take it out on all men. She used and discarded them as she pleased. She may have lured Martin in, but he should have been strong enough to say no. He was married. He should never have broken his promise. But now she has revenge. It wasn't as wonderful as she had imagined, but it wasn't terrible. He took her to a hotel, not to his place, because he was also married. This didn't bother Connie because she didn't want this to be more than a one-time thing. A married man is unlikely to want to continue the affair if the woman refuses, fearing that it will get to his wife. In general, everything went well until Martin moved his things from the bedroom. Yes, they haven't slept together for the last 2 weeks, but he hasn't moved his clothes. And even with her offer to settle everything, he did not want to go to bed with her. What should she do next? She loved her husband, but she needed to make sure he would never cheat again. At lunch, she met Anne. He moved his things out of the bedroom, she told her friend. It did, but it's still in the house, right? Yes, but ever since you told me. I wanted him to confess, but he never did. I wanted him to ask for forgiveness. I wanted to know that he would never do it again. But that's it. What I got was that he sleeps in the guest room. But you said he moved things over the weekend. Yes, he just slept there, and now he lives in another room. What should I do? Anne thought about it. What advice should I give her? She was in a pretty deep hole and knew it. The story about her and Martin was a lie. She offered, but he refused. She even wondered why she lied to her best friend, but it was too late to analyze it now. Men can be stubborn. It's a test of will. If he can break you and make you beg him to come back to the bedroom, he's won. And he'll never have to admit what he did. It's up to you, but I wouldn't let him get away with it. I would stand my ground. But what if? I love Martin. I know he shouldn't have done it, and your drinking didn't help. But he did it, and I have to live with it. We'll both have to, Anne said, thinking about her lie. The situation at home has not improved. In fact, things were getting worse. Evil words arose when they met in the corridor. Both seemed to be spending more time outside the home, and on the weekends, everyone tried to return home later than the other. Everything was heading towards conflict. Connie talked to her mother. She didn't go into detail, but described the problems. Her mother was a wise woman and was married for 40 years. She told her daughter that it would be better to sit down with her husband and try to work things out. If not, then she better prepare for one of two options: divorce or a long, unlucky marriage. Connie thought about this for 2 days. She made her decision. She was going to talk to Martin that evening. It was Friday, and they had 2 days to put this behind them. It was no longer important for her to hear the confession. She just wanted her marriage back. She returned home a little earlier than usual. She did this to catch him before he left for the evening. She entered, calling his name. She froze in place when she saw the suitcases. "Where are you going?" She was angry. She thought he was going away for the weekend. "I'm leaving," he said calmly. "Where are you going?" she demanded. He just looked at her. She suddenly felt cold. He picked up his suitcases and went to the garage. He put them in the back seat of his truck. As she did this, she saw that there were already several boxes and bags there. She followed him back into the house. He took another box. She looked at him. "What are you doing?" "I told you, I'm leaving." "You don't need to take everything. You'll come back, right? It's just a weekend trip with." But she didn't finish the sentence. She was stopped by the look in his eyes. "I'm tired of all this, Connie. I need to leave. It's best for everyone." He stopped before his voice broke. "But when will you be back?" He couldn't answer. He just walked past her. She followed him, asking him to stay and at least talk about it. He didn't listen. He got into the truck, started the engine, and drove out. He paid no attention to her words as he drove off down the road. Then he was gone. Connie burst into tears. After an hour of crying, she called her friend. Anne tried to console her and convince her that Martin would return. He was just angry, but he would realize that he had too much to lose. They were together for 8 years. It's not that easy to leave. It was a long weekend for both of them. Connie was upset about her husband leaving, and Anne was worried that the truth would come out. On Monday, Connie called work that she was sick and began trying to find her husband. She called his cell phone, but it went to voicemail after 2 rings. Sitting in the kitchen, she thought she heard him ringing in the house, but decided that it was just an echo. At the end of the day, she found the phone under the sofa in the living room. It wasn't Martin's iPhone, but it answered his number. She called his office Tuesday. She found out that he had been transferred. The secretary couldn't provide any further information, so Connie asked to speak to his boss. A minute later, she was told that he was busy, but if it was important, he would call back. He didn't call back. On Wednesday at work, she was served with divorce papers. She burst into tears and left early. The documents were a surprise to her. Although her colleagues did not know about the divorce, they knew that something was seriously wrong, and this only confirmed their suspicions. Connie called Anne. She was hysterical. "What have I done?" she moaned. After crying until she was exhausted, Anne tried to call Martin, only to find that the number no longer worked. The next day, Connie changed. It was like Jekyll turning into Hyde. She was furious that Thursday morning. "How dare this bastard divorce me? He was the one who basically cheated. I should have filed for divorce, and I should have done it the day you told me. Why would I live with a rapist?" "Connie, calm down. You both let your stubbornness get you to this point. Martin loves you, and you love him. If you can find him, you two can work things out." "Settle? Settle? Could you love a man who had sex with me without my consent?" Anne was in a quandary. We were both drunk. I was flirting. I just wasn't thinking. I mean, it shouldn't have happened. It's kind of my fault, too. Anne confessed to defuse the situation. You're just saying that. When you told me, you just didn't want me to get hurt. Now you're trying to take the blame, well, some of the blame to make me feel better, but that won't help. This man is a bastard. I should have kicked him out. He never loved me, he just used me. I'll show him now. I'm going to work. I have my own life, and I don't need him, and I never did. Connie went to work, but couldn't help herself. She left after a few hours. From home, she called Martin's boss again. She couldn't get through. This made her angry. She began to imagine what terrible things Martin must have been spreading about her in his office. She could play this game, too. The weekend was difficult for Connie. Her mother came for a few days. She wanted to see how she could help. But she could not help because she did not know the true reason for the impending divorce. But it still helped, and by Monday Connie was able to go out into public again. The next week, on Wednesday, she learned that Martin had moved to Minneapolis. On Thursday morning, she called. Well, hey Martin, I guess you didn't expect me to find you. Now I have your number. How are you? He asked indifferently. Well, where do I start? Oh yeah, I had a scumbag husband who forced my best friend to have sex with him. Then he left me. I found his old phone under the couch. It took me 40 calls to find him. You're so cute sometimes. Oh yes, and then to top it all off, I was handed divorce papers. Now the whole office knows. No, it's pretty normal here, he replied. Well, she started to cry. I have to go, he said before the line went dead. Connie cried in her office for an hour and then pulled herself together. If he wants to play big, I can too. I'll hire a divorce lawyer. With this decision, she started looking for something better. She found a lawyer, but kept silent about all the circumstances that led to her husband filing for divorce. Sean Wilson didn't fully believe her story, but she was paying for her services, so he took it upon himself to defend his client's interests. He contacted Martin's lawyer, Jerry Lewis. Sean knew about Jerry's reputation and acted strictly according to the law. Within a week, he had collected all the information about Martin Jameson. He had Martin's address, place of work, and telephone number. He conveyed this to his client, thinking they could work things out before trial. In the meantime, he prepared all the documents necessary to substantiate Connie's claims to the jointly acquired property. Connie was still on an emotional roller coaster. With the changes in her life, she found that she had few friends at work. Men who used to do everything for her smile avoided her. The women ignored her and only talked about work matters. She took it as the office being against her. They took her husband's side. This only led to more stress in her job. In fact, her unpredictable mood swings caused everyone to stay away. Alienated at work, she sought solace elsewhere. One of her supporters was Roger Smith. She called him regularly before she slept with him. She did this to get to know him. She didn't want to sleep with the man she met at the bar. There was too much risk of getting more than she wanted. With her life in ruins, Connie needed reassurance that she was wanted. She wanted men to want her like before. Roger understood this and met her for lunch or dinner whenever he could. She even gave in to him several times. Friday arrived and Connie was ready to go to work. At the threshold of the house, she changed her mind. She was on her way to Minneapolis to meet her husband. This has all gone too far. She was unhappy, and she knew he was too. All she had to do was see him and explain herself. She called work, saying she was sick, and headed to the airport. She was upset that there were no direct flights. She had to change planes in Dallas or Denver. She chose Denver because the flight departed first. During the flight, she thought about what Roger said. She found solace in his company, his hugs, and his bed several times. It didn't completely fill her emptiness, but it comforted her a little. It made her feel wanted and needed, but it was not as satisfying as with her husband. However, Roger suggested that she make this trip. This would help her find closure, he advised. She arrived in Minneapolis a little after noon. She had the address and headed to Martin's apartment. She had to go through the main lobby. There was a security door that required a code to get through. She waited and was lucky, managing to enter after the mother and children. She smiled to herself. She felt good and knew that this weekend would solve all their problems and leave them behind. She was even ready to move to this damned icy land if necessary. She just wanted her man back in her life. She had to walk for a long time, but she found Martin's apartment on the 4th floor. She looked at her watch and saw that it was a little after 2. She put the suitcase on the floor and sat on it. She decided to wait. It was Friday. He had to come home at least to change clothes. An hour passed, and there was little activity in the corridor. Connie had a lot of time to think. Why did this happen? Why did they let things get this far? Everything got out of control. She will change her story. She will say that she went on a date, but refused sex. She simply said that she slept with the man to get revenge. She was offended and wanted to hurt. Yes, she will lie. Isn't he guilty of the same thing? Continuing to deny that she didn't want to think about it anymore. At that moment, she realized that she was being watched. The woman from the apartment 3 doors down was looking at her. When Connie returned her gaze, the woman entered the apartment. Connie felt her anger begin to boil. 10 minutes later, the woman came out into the corridor again. She was wearing shorts and a tight t-shirt. They both studied each other for a few seconds before the woman moved closer. Connie stood up. They exchanged appraising glances. Connie didn't like this woman. She was about her height, red-haired. She had green eyes and a good figure. In a beauty pageant, this could be an even fight. Finally, the woman spoke. "Why are you sitting at Martin's door?" "Who cares?" Connie replied, not realizing how angry she was. "Just consider me hallway leader. Will you tell me, or will I call security? If you must know, I'm Mrs. Connie Jameson. Do you need identification?" "No, if you say so, I think I'll take your word for it. Have a nice day." But these words were insincere, and it was obvious. Connie sat back down and felt her blood boil. Who, or rather, what the hell was Martin doing here? He already has one girlfriend, that's obvious. He didn't even bother to tell her that he was still married. But the news clearly shocked her. Connie felt a small victory that she had reduced the hallway leader's ambitions for her husband. Almost 5 in the evening, Martin returned home. He was not happy to see her, and Connie took this as his desire to avoid interference in his personal life. As he came closer, she smiled. "Surprise, I just had to come and talk to you. I still love you and you." He interrupted her. "Let's go inside." He opened the door. She entered and turned to the door. He picked up her bag, walked in, and closed the door. Connie walked up to her husband and kissed him on the lips. He didn't answer. It hurt her. Is something wrong? Am I having trouble breathing? "No, it just doesn't feel right." "Does it feel right when you kiss that red-headed bitch?" She flared up. "When I kiss who?" "This big-breasted, long-legged girl who called herself the hallway perfect. She asked why I was sitting at your door." "No, at Martin's door. If you don't know her, how does she know your name?" "I don't know what you're talking about, but come here." He opened the door. "See, my name is written right on the door." "I told her I was your wife, and she clearly didn't like it. I guess you didn't tell her you were married. The way she left, you won't be hearing from her again." "I didn't get anything anyway," he said matter-of-factly. "If you don't know her, how can you be sure you won't get anything?" He just looked at her as if the question didn't deserve an answer. "Martin, I know you still love me, and I love you. We need to work things out and put this behind us. We can do everything the same as before. We could even go on a second honeymoon." "I don't think it will work. The damage is already done." "You can't forgive me. We both made mistakes." "I forgave you a while ago." "If you forgave me and still love me, why are you so stubborn? The point is this: you took my most prized possession and broke it. You did it by accident or in anger, but you did it. You can try to glue it back together, and it may serve some purpose, but it never will. The same as before. Every time I see it, I will remember how it was damaged." "Well, you did it too. You slept with Anne, remember? I know everything that happened. You both drank, and she knows how to flirt, but damn it, you should have stopped. You betrayed me first. Nothing like that. I didn't touch that bitch. Drunk or sober, I know she's nothing but trouble. Don't lie to me. I know you did it, and now you're pretending you didn't put all the blame on me. I didn't touch her. I'm tired of repeating it. This bitch is lying. Someone is definitely lying. I know Anne may not be telling the whole truth, but she wouldn't lie to me about something like that. All men are the same. So their argument, screams and tears continued. It was a long and fruitless night and day. In the end, Martin drove her to the airport and brought her to the security area. There they said goodbye. The flight back to Houston was a turbulent dream for her. She was exhausted by this conflict. She had to be woken up for a transfer to Chicago. She arrived in Houston more tired than when she left Minneapolis. On Sunday, she slept, cried, and screamed in rage. She knew that she had lost her husband, but it was his fault. He just didn't want to admit his mistake and ask for her forgiveness. Damn, he's so stubborn. He was always stubborn. Why is he like this? This could only mean one thing. He no longer loves her. Connie spent a sleepless night. Monday wasn't any better for her. By Tuesday, she was furious. Many people in the office avoided her. Her boss called her late on Tuesday. He told her to take the next day off and deal with what was on her mind, or not to come back at all. It's all gone so far. When Connie called her friend Anne, she knew what to do. They will go have fun and find men. By 10, they were already drinking at a local club. An hour later, they had the men with them. At midnight, they were at Anne's house. Connie was with a nice-looking man. They went to bed. The next morning, she woke up alone in bed. She wasn't surprised or angry. Getting up, she took a shower and went to the kitchen in a robe. On the way, she passed Anne's bedroom. There she saw where her gentleman had gone. He and another man were in bed with Anne. The memory came back to her. It was her bachelorette party. Anne hired a man for her. And after a few drinks, or rather a lot of drinks, he performed his dance show. Later, he took her to bed. She felt a little guilty, but she was still single. There was a week left before the wedding. And what will Martin do on his last free nights? The sex wasn't bad. In fact, it was memorable. But the next morning, Connie woke up to find a man in bed with Anne. Was this a pattern? Was Anne always supposed to have a man after Connie, as if to prove that she could take him away? At this moment, she didn't want to think about it anymore. After all, this could mean that Anne deliberately seduced Martin, and it was far from a voluntary surrender, as she described. Connie returned to work on Thursday and kept her emotions under control. It helped that she had lunch with Roger. Friday passed without incident. She felt the worst was over. She will pick up the pieces and make the best of it. And when it's all over, she'll have a better life than she ever had with Martin Jameson. Everything stabilized the next month. Then it was time for testimony. She and Anne were both there. An attractive lawyer named Jerry Lewis represented her husband. His manners were charming. This reassured her, but her lawyer knew better. He tried to warn her and explain how important it was to be truthful. Jerry took sworn statements from both and did not dispute a word. Under oath, Anne described how Martin forced her to have sex, and Connie claimed that she was always faithful. All this time, Jerry smiled his charming smile. When it was over, they discussed having Martin return to Texas for his testimony. That's when Jerry dropped the bomb. "I would like to make another statement," he said. Connie's lawyer asked whose and why. "His name is Roger Smith, and I think he'll have an interesting testimony, and I want you to hear it." Jerry turned on his laptop and started playing a video. It was a recording of Connie's confession about a night with another man. The audio was great, but the video only had a few shots of Connie. However, this left no doubt who was speaking. Connie looked at Anne, then at her lawyer. He looked unhappy. "I was just trying to get Martin to understand how it feels when the person you love, well, have sex with someone else." "Oh, really? You didn't use the term having sex when describing your night, did you?" Jerry smiled the same charming smile. I was angry and just wanted to hurt him like he hurt me. Connie defended herself. Really? Then how do you explain these photographs? Jerry, with the same charming smile, handed over several 8x10 photographs of Connie and Roger Smith. Some of them were taken in a restaurant, and one was taken in a hotel. And I have a few more pictures of Mr. Jitsadu Smith with other women, Jerry said, looking at Anne. I don't know what this proves. My client is a businesswoman and meets a lot of people for lunch, both men and women, and she has had meetings in hotels, Sean offered. Jerry smiled even wider. Well, let's get Mr. Smith here and see what he can tell us about these photos. I'm sure your client can explain her business dealings with her best friend's boss. Connie's lawyer looked at her. He looked dissatisfied and annoyed. Let's invite Mr. Bum Smith. He volunteered to come. In fact, Roger Smith came without a summons, but knew that if he did not appear, he would be summoned to court. If this had happened and he had been subpoenaed, he would have lost his job and probably his family. He was interested in not having his name appear in the divorce proceedings. Jerry made it clear that he would call him as a witness and ensure that he was summoned at his residence. The lawyer explained that this would save him from public shame at work. Roger was called. Jerry left the room. Roger was extremely angry that he was dragged into this matter. He wasn't angry that he slept with Connie, Anne, and a few others, but the thought of it being revealed would destroy him. He explained his situation, then laid it out as it was. Connie, if I get subpoenaed, I will argue that this whole thing was orchestrated to destroy your marriage. It was a way for you and Anne to have a threesome with other men and me. If I lose my job and family, I will do anything possible to destroy both of you. Anne organized this for me. I will tell you everything. I will even tell you about the experience with Anne's women, and I will hint that it was all to get you into bed with her. Connie stared at her former lover, then at Anne. Was it true? Could Roger prove it? Or would it just be his words against Anne and the other woman? Even lying in court would probably hurt her case. Her lawyer laid it out like it is. If this all comes out in court and Connie only has Anne's testimony, it will be bad. The questions he would ask, and I'm sure Jerry would be thinking along the same lines, would be, how could you stay married to a rapist? And if he forced your best friend to have sex, it would be some kind of setup. How could you remain friends with the woman your husband cheated on you with? And how did you end up in bed with your best friend's boss? Yeah, it didn't look good. They invited Jerry back. He smiled, but it was the same smile as at the beginning. Shall we talk about timing? He asked. He laid out his client's terms. He wanted 60% of all assets and a release of all personal retirement accounts for each spouse. This surprised Connie, but not her lawyer. Jerry then added humiliation. He demanded payment from Connie for his services. He was asked to leave the room. They discussed it. Connie could get money for part of the house from her parents. The rest was half the cost of the furniture, which was also not a problem. The division of their funds was easily settled, but the $25,000 legal fee was a blow. Connie demanded Roger and Anne's help with this. When this was agreed upon, they called Jerry back. With the paperwork prepared and signed, Jerry turned to leave. I will send these documents to my client, and if he is satisfied with them, I will return them and take them to court. He may want to make some changes, so be prepared for that. Best case scenario is this will take a week, at worst 2 weeks before I submit the final documents. That night Connie returned home and cried all night. It just wasn't right. Martin shouldn't have been so stubborn. By the next day, she had convinced herself to make another attempt to make him understand. The documents have not yet been submitted for a week or two. Returning home, she sat down at the computer. She found his new phone number and called. She was shocked when a woman's voice answered. Hello, it was a female voice. I'm looking for my husband. Who are you? Connie demanded. I think you remember me. I'm the hallway leader. And why are you answering my husband's phone? Well, it's nice to hear your voice, Connie, but to answer your question, Martin is in the shower. Connie fumed and tried to find words, but before she could respond, the woman continued. Oh, here he comes out. Martin, you could at least wrap yourself in a towel. You're naked and you're embarrassing me. Here, Connie. Then she heard Martin's voice. Why should you be embarrassed? You're naked too. Yes, Connie, how can I help you? Martin Raymond Jameson, we're still married. You have no right to sleep with that old woman. I've changed my mind. If you want to play big, I can too. I'll come to you and sort it out. You can come if you want, Connie, but we're already divorced. No, we're not divorced. It'll take a week or two. I'll tell my lawyer to block it. That's impossible. The papers were filed with the judge at 6 p.m. It's official. Damn you, Martin, I'll see you in court. Better yet, I'll see you in person tomorrow. Maybe tonight if I find a flight. You're not getting away with this. Do what you want, but it's all over for me. When can I expect my check? Connie hung up. She didn't sleep that night and got on a plane the next morning. In Denver, she reached her lawyer. After checking, he informed her that everything Martin said was true. The divorce was final. This didn't stop her. She continued on to Minneapolis. She took a taxi to his apartment and waited to get into the building. It took a while, but she finally followed the man inside through the security door. She settled down in front of his apartment and waited. She was waiting for Martin and this bitch who called herself the hallway leader. Security came, then the manager. He showed her the empty apartment when she agreed to leave. She saw that Martin had indeed moved, but said she would stay to meet the bitch. It took security and police to escort her from the building. Outside, she was told that if she returned, she would be charged with trespassing. The police were kind enough to take her to the airport. There she burst into tears. It took 2 flight attendants to board her for the first airplane heading to Houston. When she arrived, she had to call Anne to come pick her up. For the next 3 days, she just cried and slept. On Monday, Connie stood up and looked at herself in the mirror. You look like crap, Connie Jameson. Pull yourself together and get on with your life. That bastard and his bitch can't get the better of you. She got dressed and went to work. She threw herself into her work. She worked hard and tried to control her emotions. She was successful most of the time and had few flare-ups over the next few weeks. She began drinking in the evenings to help her fall asleep and having fun with Anne to drive away her sadness. She did everything she could to make her life bearable. But the empty house reminded her of what she once had. This was both good and bad. Sometimes she felt the pain of the divorce. Sometimes she was angry at his betrayal and lies. 6 months passed, and most in her office thought she was over it. Then the package arrived. It was FedEx, and it was marked as private. The secretary did not pay attention to the return address, and if she had, it would not have told her anything. Connie received the package and examined it. When she saw that the package was from Minneapolis, she didn't know whether to open it, her or not. The address was not from the old apartment, but she knew that he had moved. She threw it in the trash twice and took it back twice. Connie was experiencing so many conflicting emotions that she didn't notice that most of the office had already left. Finally, she opened the envelope. The first thing that came out was a photograph of Martin and the corridor warden. She was so angry that it took her a minute to realize it was their wedding photo. By inertia, she tore it into small pieces. She then examined the rest of the contents. There was a newspaper clipping. It took up almost an entire page and contained several photographs. Connie had read enough to know the bitch's name. Katie Taylor Jameson, it said. Next were 6 napkins in different colors with their names printed in silver. This only added fuel to the fire. Then there was a large envelope with a wedding invitation. There was a note on the envelope apologizing for not sending it on time. But the last thing was the most painful. It was an announcement about the imminent birth of a child. The reason it hurt her so much was because she and Martin wanted children, but they didn't work out. They both went to the doctor, and she was the problem. They were told that pregnancy was not impossible, but it was extremely unlikely. Now Martin is going to have a child with that bitch of the corridor warden. Reading the date, it dawned on her. The baby is due in 6 months. They just got married. Fucking whore, she hissed. A few minutes later, she made a phone call. The Jameson residence came that familiar and haunting voice. "Katie Taylor, you bitch." "Well, hello, how are you doing?" "Fine, you're a bitch, and I don't carry a bastard inside me. Didn't think I'd find you, did I, Miss Hall Prefect?" "It's nice to hear your voice, but to answer your question, our number is in the directory." "I don't care, you two-faced bitch. You won't ruin my day." "I'm sorry to hear that," the same sweet voice answered. "I received your sweet little package today. It didn't get lost in the mail. But I don't care what you two bastards do. So all your efforts are in vain, bitch." "Yes, I'm glad you got it. I hope you cut your finger on the paper, bitch, and it fell off. I'll send you your money back. I don't want to owe you a single penny, you're a homewrecker." "Oh, it wasn't much of a problem or expense." "Why did you make such an effort? If you think you can rub it in my face, you're full of crap." "Well, I just wanted you to know. And I'm sorry I forgot to send your invitation, but I included it in the package. I just love the photo. I would wipe my ass with it, but I would tear it into a million pieces." "Yes, the photo really, so many pieces. The card is priceless. It says you had to get pregnant in order for Martin to marry you. Are you sure it's his child? I'll make sure the child finds out you were pregnant when you got married." "Card, yes, I thought you should know. In fact, you're the first to know. Martin just has entered. Do you think I should tell him?" "Damn, he already knows. You used it to catch him. He would never have looked at a scum like you if I had been there." "Really? Now, don't say such things. But Martin and I have something to discuss, so I have to end our conversation, Connie. Call more, always a pleasure." "I'll call again. And I'll pay to catch your cheating ass. I'll make sure Martin checks on the baby. Someone like you, who knows who he belongs to. Damn you, bitch, he might not even be white. Damn, you probably slept with anyone who could." "Now, I really shouldn't say that. I was a corridor prefect." "Callaway leader, you stole my husband, you dirty bitch. I hope you'll rot in hell." "Yes, I understand your feelings, but I really need to go. Martin is here looking at me with a bed-like gaze. Bye." Connie was so angry that when the phone went off, she screamed and threw the phone across the room. This knocked the phone base off her desk. It took her a minute to calm down. Then she tried to call back. She demanded to talk to Martin. But every time she called, the line was busy. After 20 minutes and a dozen attempts via landline and cell phone, she gave up. On the way home, she was seething with rage. She came home and called Anne. They will go out for drinks and find men. But when she called, more bad news awaited her. Anne told her that she needed to go to the doctor the next morning. "She has problems." Anne burst into tears and admitted that she had become infected and that since they had slept with the same men, Connie might also have become infected. Her prognosis turned out to be the worst in her entire life. The next day, Connie received a clean bill of health, but was scheduled to be retested in 30 days to be sure. Leaving the office, she vowed never to see or talk to Anne Barton again. Time heals all wounds, as they say. It's been 6 months, but Connie, I still felt pain. It wouldn't be so bad if she didn't know about the baby. She couldn't resist checking the birth announcements in the Minneapolis newspaper. It was easy to do online. Martin and Katie have a boy. They named him Richard Chase. The day she read the news, all the pain came back to her. A month passed, but she pulled herself together again. Leaving all this behind, Connie plunged back into work. She flirted with men, but only teased them. She wasn't going to give in to anyone, and she wanted to torture all men for what Martin did to her. Yes, her life was good until Martin cheated, and look where it got her. And in a way, she blamed Martin for Anne's condition. A year has passed since she found out about the new marriage of her ex-husband. She stopped dating, but still went out to have fun. She visited some singles bars and used men to buy her drinks. All she wanted to do was tease and disappoint them. She looked at all men as fools who could be manipulated. Even her boss succumbed to her whims. One day her boss called. Connie, I need you to go to Atlanta for a week. Well, of course, anything for you, Mr. Parks. What do I need to do in Atlanta? She said with a voice full of sexuality. Don't waste your charms on me. I'm too old. Oh, you're not that old, Mr. Parks. Will you come with me? No, Connie, you will go alone. I wanted to send 2 people from the office, but the budget does not allow it. So I am sending you. Why me, Mr. Parks? I'm sure there are others who are more experienced, but you know that I will do my best. That's what I want, Connie. Go to Atlanta and okay them down to their panties. I need a list of all their contacts and clients, and don't forget their prospects. I want to get around them. Mr. Parks, you want me to spy for you. We all work for the same company, don't we? Yes, and company, everything no matter which office makes the sale. So go there, show off your charms there, and find out all the necessary information. You can handle it. Mr. Parks, thank you for your trust. I will do my best, she replied in a seductive tone. Stop it, Connie. Go over there, twirl your butt, and stick out your chest like you do here. You're a good employee, but you can be a pain in the ass sometimes. Now take your charms and do some good for our department. He said this with a serious expression on his face. Connie realized that he was serious and her little performance was wasted. She smiled and accepted the ticket. She left on Thursday, taking the next day to prepare and pack. On Saturday, she was already flying to Atlanta. She met the head Atlanta branch, Jeff Milliken. He was charming and invited her to dinner. He treated her to wine and dinner, and by the end of the evening she was drunk. He took her to his apartment and put her to bed. On Sunday morning, she woke up naked in a strange bed. And what's worse, there was a man next to her. He hugged her and smiled. It was Jeff Milliken. Feeling his naked body next to her, she looked at him with anger. How dare you? He smiled. How dare I do that? You shouldn't have. I didn't give consent. He laughed. Do you want me to call the police? I'm sure they'll check on you. That way you can prove your accusation. This is not funny, and I will sue you. How will you feel in prison? I don't know, but I'm not going there, he smiled. Well, you'll get there. I'll ensure it. Are you sure they did something to you? Embarrassed, Connie felt your body. She discovered that nothing had been done to her. She frowned. Disappointed, he asked. No, I'm glad you didn't take advantage of me. I would never take advantage of a sleeping woman. You know, you drink too much. You didn't help by constantly refilling the champagne. It was delicious, but now my head is pounding. He smiled. Most women tell me this before I take them to bed. Do you often drive women into bed? She asked, feeling a slight jealousy that she couldn't explain. Not very often, and not one as beautiful as you. You are such a flatterer. Having said this, she leaned closer to him. It was nice to be around him. I'm just telling the truth, and I did everything I could to help you. Help me? How? You were sent here to use your charms to obtain a list of our clients and prospects, so I just helped you get started. What do you mean? I was sent here to study. I'm not some spy. He smiled. Yes, you are not Mata Hari, but I think you tried your best. She tried to move away, but he held her tightly. She didn't resist as much as she would have liked. After the kiss, he allowed her to get up and take a shower. When she came out, she found her suitcases on the bed. She got dressed, and they went to brunch. Sunday passed pleasantly, and he asked if she would like to check into a hotel for the duration of her stay. She smiled, thinking about the money she could save and how she could use staying with him to her advantage. Every day he showed her the office and gave her free access. Several times she saw lists of clients and prospects. She didn't take them, preferring to take pictures of the documents with her phone. Every evening Jeff took her to a nice restaurant and then to some entertainment. Once it was a walk in the park, another time it was a performance in the city theater. At night, he always gave her privacy in the bathroom while he waited in bed. He slept naked, and after the second night Connie also began sleeping naked. What was unusual about those nights was that Jeff never tried to make love to her. He hugged her and whispered in her ear, but never took the initiative. On Thursday evening, they lay in bed together. Her plane left at 10:15 the next morning. Connie snuggled up to him and enjoyed the feeling of being with a man who didn't want her just sex before you jump up and leave. She was a little surprised when he asked the question, "Why do people have sex?" "What? Why do men and women want to have sex?" "That's what adults do. That's why we're all in a hurry to grow up, and to drive a car and drink." "But why do adults want to have sex?" "I don't know, you tell me." "It's part of our nature. There are two parts." "Really? Okay, quick and simple. Then thank you, ma'am," she replied. "No, not at all. The first part is our internal need to reproduce. Every time our body encourages us to have sex, it is for the purpose of creating a child." "Oh, really? Then why do women line up for tablets to not get pregnant?" "Because they know that their body will urge them to have sex, and they know that their body is doing it to reproduce. So they try to cheat your body, wanting to relieve its hormonal needs without worries." "So what you're saying is that they, men and women, have a dual reason. One is to satisfy the need to reproduce, and the other is to avoid creating a child?" Connie asked. "Both of these reasons are just the physical part of sex. The second is the emotional need, the need to be desired for more than just sex." He gave her time to think about what he had said. "Why didn't you do it? I mean, you like men, right?" He laughed. "Not at all. I wanted you from the moment I saw you." Connie looked at him in the darkness. "Then why didn't you do it, or at least hinted?" "How old are you, Connie?" 33, maybe 35. "Jeff, you never ask a woman her age." "I understand, but I'm 40. I'm not at the age where I can only think about my physical needs. I don't want you just to try to make a baby." "All you had to do was ask," she whispered before kissing him. The next day, Jeff drove her to the airport. At the security checkpoint, he hugged her, kissed her hand, then turned and left. Connie was a little disappointed. Why did he do all this? It was a little unclear to her, but she understood more when she returned to work. She was called to the boss on Monday morning. All the photos she emailed were listings dating back 10 years. It was obvious that the office felt she had betrayed them. By Wednesday, Connie was furious with Jeff Milliken. He beat her. How to Copic violin. She was seething. "This bastard fucked me in bed and then in the office. He's probably laughing now." By Friday, she was looking for another job. "In 2 weeks here, I had a new job thanks to a friend." She moved to Denver. In this gone a month to arrange everything and prepare for the move. She left the house empty and put it up for sale. She rented a townhouse and started a new life. 3 months later, there was a knock on the door of her house. It was noon on Saturday. When she opened the door, a very unpleasant surprise awaited her. "What, crap, what are you doing here?" she screamed. "I finally decided to come." "Why, to laugh at me? I can promise that you won't. You'll wait." "No, you better leave." Jeff turned and looked at the taxi at the curb. "I see. It's a good thing I asked him to wait. It cost me an extra $10, but I think it was worth it. I'll come back." Connie calmed down a little. The shock passed and her anger returned. "Send it. You can always summon another. Come in and I'll really tell you what I think of you." He accepted the invitation and waved away the taxi. Walking inside, he set down his bag. Connie invited him to sit down. "Do you want something to drink? Coffee, tea, soda, cyanide?" "There will be enough water. It was a long journey. I would have arrived sooner if I knew where you moved to." "Really? So if I stayed in Houston, would I already have the pleasure of your company?" "Yes, I waited a month, and when you didn't call, I decided to step over my pride and come." "What do you mean, get over your pride? You have a lot of nerve. If you had come to Houston, I might be in jail right now. And with you here, I can still see the inside of the cell. I can always declare insanity." Why are you so angry? Let me think, you bastard. You deceived me in every way. You got me fired. You forced me to move. Now I live in a box instead of my home, a house that I am forced to sell. I have a job where I earn half as much money. I'm starting all over again, so why should I be angry? Connie, have you thought about the truth? Is it true? She asked, puzzled. Yes, you could call on Monday and tell your boss that I met you at the airport. I made it clear that I knew why you were sent. If you had done that, I would have explained to him that I was told about the plans for 2 weeks before your arrival. That way he would have known that it was not you who gave away his plans. You could have returned with a clear conscience, but you had false loyalty. No, I just let you make a fool of yourself. You really helped. I admit, I wanted you to stay. I guess I wasn't as honest as I should have been. So now you're saying Jeff Milliken isn't perfect. You came with the intention of spying. I left the documents in plain sight and thought you would try to photograph them. I assumed you wouldn't try. Copy them in front of witnesses. All I did was allow you to send false information back to your office. I gave you data from 10 years ago. If you weren't in a rush to steal them, you could have checked the date. When your actions did not lead to the expected result, your boss threw you away like an old rag. You made your own choice. Damn bastard, why are you here? What do you want? Like I said, I waited a month. I stepped over my pride. I found you and came. Why, you. What do you want? And I won't let you try to do it to me, baby. He frowned. Actually, that's what I came for. You're kidding me. Why did I even let you into the house? He smiled. You invited me yourself. Only to then throw you out without a taxi waiting at the door. You won't do this to me, will you, Connie? Oh, I'll do it again, and you forgot about my water. You promised. You have a lot of nerve. How do you know that I won't pee in a glass? I have to, you know. She got up and brought him a glass of water. He put down the water, stood up, and kissed her. After the kiss, she stepped back and began to think. She felt warm and safe in his arms. She remembered how calm and welcome she felt waking up next to him. And he didn't just use her, he made love to her. So many men from her past just had sex with her and left. Every time she was with Anne, she was alone the next morning. Her beau was in bed with Anne and her beau. But she realized that it wasn't so bad. She didn't want to see the man the next morning. But with Jeff, she felt comfortable waking up next to him. Jeff sat and watched. He was worried. He was afraid when he saw the gloomy expression on her face. This frown was caused by the realization that all the lies came from Anne. Martin was telling the truth. She realized that she should have acted differently. Maybe if she had done things differently, she would still be married. She remembered what it was like to be loved. But that's in the past. Martin married again and has a child. No matter how it happened, it's a fact. This cannot be changed. She looked at the man again. She remembered how wonderful it was when they made love. Back home in Houston, she thought about calling him, but the way he left made her doubtful. What if this was all an act to seduce her? And on Monday, when she walked into an office filled with wasps, their time together was far from her thoughts. He stood up and approached her. She simply looked at him as he towered over her. He leaned over and kissed her. She didn't resist as much as she wanted and soon began to kiss him back. When he released her, he helped her up and kissed her again. Connie, I've been thinking about you all this time. I want and need. I need to feel emotions. My physical needs can be satisfied in many ways, but not emotional. I was hoping that you would feel the same and call me. But you didn't call, so I came. What I want to say is that I love you, Connie, but I need you to love me too. I need to think about it. I have 1,000 questions and 100 problems that need to be solved. But now my body is telling me that I need to try to make a baby. And I need emotions too. She took his hand and pulled him into the bedroom. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.